What if the reason most businesses struggle, most products fail, and most opportunities fade away has nothing to do with the quality of what they offer, but everything to do with one critical skill they never truly master: the ability to sell with precision? Because in a world where everyone is shouting, promoting, and competing for attention, the difference between success and failure is not effort, it is effectiveness. And yet most people approach advertising like a gamble, relying on creativity, intuition, or luck, hoping something will work. When in reality, the greatest fortunes have been built not on guesswork, but on method, on testing, and on a deep understanding of what truly drives human action. And this is where everything begins to change. Because the moment you realize that advertising is not art, but science, not opinion, but measurement, not hope, but proof, you step into a completely different level of control where every word you use, every headline you write, and every offer you present becomes a tool, a calculated step in a system designed to produce results. And this is the hidden advantage that separates those who struggle from those who scale. Because while most are trying to be clever, the few who understand this are being clear. While most are trying to impress, they are trying to convert. And that difference changes everything. Because advertising has only one purpose: to sell, and if it does not sell, it fails, no matter how beautiful or creative it appears. And once you accept this, you begin to see every message differently, not as expression, but as performance, not as art, but as a measurable asset that either generates income or drains it. And this is where the real power begins, because now you are no longer guessing what works, you are testing, measuring, and refining, turning small improvements into massive gains. Because even a slight increase in response can multiply your results, your revenue, and your growth. And this is one of the most powerful financial principles you can ever understand: that success is not built on big leaps alone, but on small optimizations repeated consistently. And as you step into this mindset, you begin to realize that the marketplace is not random, it is responsive, it rewards clarity, it rewards value, and it rewards those who understand how to communicate effectively. And when you master this, when you learn how to capture attention, build trust, and guide decisions with precision, you gain a skill that goes far beyond advertising. You gain the ability to influence outcomes, to create demand, and to build systems that generate income predictably. And that is where everything changes. Because when you can control your ability to sell, you can control your ability to grow. And when you can control your growth, you move closer to a level of financial freedom that is not dependent on luck, trends, or circumstances, but on principles, systems, and a deep understanding of what truly works. And once you see this, you will never look at advertising, business, or opportunity the same way again. What if everything you've ever believed about advertising is wrong? Not because it doesn't work, but because it was never meant to be guesswork in the first place. Because while most people treat advertising like art, like creativity, like cleverness, the truth is far more precise, far more disciplined, and far more powerful. Because advertising, when done correctly, is not art at all. It is science, a system governed by tested principles, measurable results, and predictable outcomes. And the moment you understand this, you step into a completely different level of control. Because now you are no longer hoping your message works. You are knowing why it works, how it works, and how to improve it every single time. And this is the exact transformation Claude C. Hopkins introduced when he declared that advertising had moved from gamble to certainty, from speculation to method, from opinion to proof. And this shift changes everything, because it means that every word you write, every headline you create, and every offer you present is either making you money or costing you money. And the difference is not luck, it is understanding. Because the purpose of advertising is not to entertain, not to impress, and not to build vague awareness. Its only purpose is to sell, and if it does not sell, it fails. No matter how beautiful it looks or how clever it sounds. And this is where most people go wrong. They try to win applause instead of results. They try to be creative instead of effective. And in doing so, they lose sight of the only thing that matters, which is measurable return. And once you grasp this, you begin to see advertising differently. You begin to treat every campaign like a test, every message like an experiment, and every result like data. Because in this world, there is no room for guesswork, only for proof. And this is where your advantage begins. Because while others are guessing, you are measuring. While others are hoping, you are optimizing. And this difference compounds over time. Because even a small improvement in conversion can mean thousands, even millions in additional profit. And this is one of the most powerful financial freedom principles hidden within scientific advertising. That small improvements in efficiency create massive gains in income. And those who understand this do not chase shortcuts. They refine systems. They test relentlessly. And they build results that grow predictably and sustainably. And as you step into this mindset, you begin to realize that success in business is not about doing more. It is about doing what works and eliminating what does not. And this is where clarity replaces confusion, where strategy replaces randomness, and where results replace hope. Because now you are operating with principles that have been tested across thousands of campaigns, across millions of dollars, and across decades of real-world results. And these principles are not opinions. They are laws. Laws that govern human behavior, attention, and decision-making. And once you learn to apply them, you gain the ability to influence outcomes with precision, to create messages that resonate, and to build campaigns that convert consistently. And this is the true power you are about to unlock. Not just the ability to advertise, but the ability to sell systematically, predictably, and profitably. And once you understand this, you will never again look at advertising the same way, because you will realize that behind every successful campaign is not luck, not talent, but a system, a science, all full suit, and a set of principles that anyone willing to learn and apply can use to create extraordinary results in business and beyond. As you move deeper into this mastery of advertising, you begin to understand a truth that separates amateurs from professionals. And that truth is this: the moment you stop seeing advertising as words on a page and start seeing it as a living, working salesman, everything changes. Because now every advertisement you create is no longer judged by how it looks or how it sounds, but by how it performs, by how it persuades, and by how effectively it converts attention into action. And this is exactly what Claude Hopkins meant when he insisted that advertising is nothing more than salesmanship in print, multiplied across thousands or even millions of people. And when you truly absorb this idea, you begin to approach every decision differently, because you start asking the only question that matters: would this help me sell if I were speaking face to face with a customer? And that single question eliminates countless mistakes, because it forces you to focus on clarity, sincerity, and usefulness instead of cleverness, style, or ego. And this is where most advertisers fail, because they try to impress rather than persuade. They try to entertain rather than convince. And in doing so, they forget that the reader is not looking for amusement. The reader is looking for value, for solutions, for reasons to act. And this is where your mindset must shift completely, because when you write an advertisement, you are not addressing a crowd. You are speaking to one individual, one person with specific desires, specific problems, and specific motivations. And the more clearly you can see that person in your mind, the more effective your message becomes. Because now you are not writing to everyone. You are speaking directly to someone. And that creates connection. And connection creates trust. And trust leads to action. And this is one of the most powerful principles in both advertising and financial success. That clarity of communication leads to clarity of results, because when people understand you, they are far more likely to respond to you. And as you begin to apply this principle, you will notice that simplicity becomes your greatest strength, because the best salesmen are not the most eloquent, they are the most understandable. They are the ones who can explain clearly, directly, and convincingly why something matters. And this is why Hopkins warned against overly clever writing, against literary flourishes, against anything that draws attention away from the message itself, because every unnecessary word, every confusing phrase, every attempt to be clever instead of clear creates friction, and friction reduces response, and reduced response means lost sales, and lost sales mean lost income. And this is why simplicity is not just a stylistic choice, it is a financial strategy, because the clearer your message, the higher your conversion. And the higher your conversion, the greater your return. And this is how communication directly impacts your financial freedom. Because when you can communicate value effectively, you can create demand. And when you can create demand, you can generate income. And as you continue to refine your approach, you begin to understand another critical principle, and that is the importance of focusing on the customer's perspective. Because people do not care about your product, your company, or your story, they care about themselves, their needs, their desires, and their outcomes. And this is why the most effective advertisements are not about the seller, they are about the buyer. They focus on benefits rather than features, on results rather than descriptions, and this shift in focus is what transforms an average message into a compelling one. Because now you are not asking people to buy, you are showing them why they want to buy. And this is where persuasion becomes natural, because you are aligning your message with their interests. And this alignment is what drives action. And this principle extends far beyond advertising into every area of business and finance, because the more value you can create for others, the more value you can capture for yourself. And this is the foundation of financial freedom, not taking, but giving, not pushing, but attracting. And as you begin to integrate this mindset, you will notice that your approach becomes more strategic, more intentional, and more effective because you are no longer guessing, you are applying principles that have been proven through countless tests and real-world results. And this is where another key idea emerges. The importance of testing everything, because in scientific advertising, nothing is assumed, everything is measured. And this is what separates it from traditional approaches. Because instead of relying on opinions, you rely on data. Instead of trusting instincts alone, you validate them through results. And this is where true control comes from. Because when you test different headlines, different offers, different approaches, you begin to see patterns. You begin to understand what works and what does not. And this understanding allows you to continuously improve, to refine your strategy and to increase your effectiveness over time. And this process of continuous improvement is one of the most powerful financial principles you can adopt, because small improvements in performance can lead to exponential increases in income. And this is how wealth is built. Not through one big breakthrough, but through consistent optimization, through refining your systems, and through eliminating inefficiencies. And as you continue on this path, you begin to realize that success in advertising, like success in business, is not about doing more. It is about doing better. It is about focusing on what works, eliminating what does not, and continuously improving your approach. And this is where you move from being reactive from hoping for results to creating them, and from uncertainty to predictability. And this is the true power of scientific advertising, not just the ability to sell, but the ability to sell with precision, with confidence, and with consistency. And once you master this, you are no longer dependent on luck or trends. You are operating with a system that allows you to generate results on demand. And that is where true business power begins. Because when you can control your ability to sell, you can control your ability to earn. And when you can control your ability to earn, you move closer to a level of financial independence that most people only hope to achieve but never fully understand how to create. As you continue to sharpen your understanding of advertising as a science, you begin to uncover another powerful truth, and that is this. People do not buy because you ask them to buy. They buy because they are shown clearly and convincingly how your product serves their self-interest. Because at the core of every decision, every action, and every purchase lies one fundamental driver, and that is the desire for personal benefit. And once you truly understand this, your entire approach to communication changes. Because you stop talking about what you want and start focusing entirely on what the customer wants. And this is exactly what Claude Hopkins emphasized when he made it clear that people do not care about your business, your profits, or your ambitions. They care about themselves, their problems, and their desires. And this is where the concept of service becomes the most powerful tool in your arsenal. Because the best advertising does not demand, it offers. It does not push, it attracts. It does not say, I'll buy this. It says, here is something that will benefit you. And this subtle shift is what transforms resistance into curiosity, and curiosity into action. Because when people feel that they are being helped rather than sold to, they lower their defenses. They become more open, and they begin to engage with your message in a completely different way. And this is why some of the most successful campaigns in history have been built around offers that reduce risk, that provide value up front, and that allow the customer to experience the product before making a commitment. Because when you remove risk, you remove hesitation. And when you remove hesitation, you accelerate decisions. And this is a critical principle not just in advertising, but in building financial success. Because the easier you make it for people to say yes, the more often they will. And the more often they say yes, the more your income grows. And this is why one of the most powerful financial freedom principles you can adopt is this: reduce friction, increase flow, because every barrier you remove, every doubt you eliminate, and every risk you minimize increases the likelihood of action. And this is how small improvements in your approach can lead to significant increases in your results. And as you begin to apply this mindset, you will notice that your focus shifts from selling to serving, from convincing to demonstrating. And this is where your effectiveness multiplies, because now you are not trying to force a decision, you are guiding it. You are showing the customer exactly how your product fits into their life, how it solves their problem, and how it improves their situation. And this clarity is what drives action, because people do not act on confusion. They act on understanding, and the clearer your message, the stronger your results. And this is where another critical principle comes into play, and that is the importance of proof. Because in a world full of claims, promises, and exaggerations, people are naturally skeptical. And this skepticism can only be overcome with evidence, with specifics, and with demonstrations that show rather than tell. And this is why vague statements and general claims are so ineffective, because they lack credibility, they lack substance, and they fail to create conviction. But when you provide specific details, when you offer measurable results, and when you present clear evidence, something changes, because now your message carries weight, it carries authority, and it becomes far more persuasive. And this is why Hopkins insisted on the importance of being specific, because specificity transforms claims into facts, into belief, and belief into action. And this is where your ability to influence outcomes increases dramatically, because you are no longer relying on hope, you are relying on proof. And this principle extends directly into financial growth. Because the same mindset that demands proof, advertising should be applied to every business decision, every investment, and every strategy. Because when you base your actions on data, on evidence, and on measurable results, you reduce risk, you increase efficiency, and you create a system that produces consistent outcomes. And this is how wealth is built, not through guesswork, not through speculation, but through informed decisions, through tested strategies, and through continuous improvement. And as you continue to refine your approach, you begin to see that every element of your advertising must work together as a cohesive system, because the headline captures attention, the message builds interest, the proof creates belief, and the offer drives action. And when any one of these elements is weak, the entire system suffers. But when they are aligned, when they are optimized, and when they are tested, the results can be extraordinary. And this is where you begin to operate at a different level, because you are no longer creating ads, you are building systems, systems that attract attention, convert interest into desire, and turn desire into measurable results. And this is the essence of scientific advertising, not creativity without direction, but creativity guided by principles, by data, and by a deep understanding of human behavior. And once you master this, you gain a level of control that most people never achieve, because you are no longer guessing what will work, you are knowing what works, and you are using that knowledge to create consistent, predictable, and scalable success. And that is where the true power lies, not just in selling more, but in building a system that allows you to grow continuously, to improve consistently, and to move steadily toward financial independence through the disciplined application of proven principles that align effort with results and turn knowledge into measurable outcomes that compound over time. As you move further into the discipline of scientific advertising, you begin to recognize that success is not built on isolated ideas, but on a system of interconnected elements, each one playing a precise role in guiding the prospect from attention to action. And among these elements, few are as powerful or as misunderstood as the headline, because the headline is not merely an introduction. It is the gatekeeper, the filter, and the first moment of truth, the point at which your entire effort either succeeds or fails, because no matter how strong your message is, no matter how persuasive your argument may be, if you fail to capture the attention of the right person, everything else becomes irrelevant. And this is why Claude Hopkins placed such extraordinary emphasis on headlines, understanding that their purpose is not to attract everyone, but to attract the right ones, the people who are most likely to be interested, most likely to respond, and most likely to buy. And this distinction is critical, because many advertisers make the mistake of trying to appeal to the masses, of trying to create something clever, vague, or intriguing that captures general attention, but in doing so they dilute their effectiveness, because attention without relevance is wasted, and wasted attention means wasted money, and this is one of the most important financial principles embedded within advertising. That targeting is more valuable than reach, because reaching the wrong audience at scale is far less profitable than reaching the right audience with precision. And as you begin to apply this principle, you start to see headlines not as creative expressions, but as strategic tools designed to identify and attract a specific type of person, someone with a specific need, a specific desire, or a specific problem. And this is why the most effective headlines are often direct, clear, and benefit-driven, because they immediately signal to the reader, this is for you. And when that signal is strong, the right people stop, they pay attention, and they engage, and this is where your opportunity begins, because once you have their attention, you have the chance to guide them through your message, to build interest, to create desire, and to lead them toward action. But if you fail at this first step, if your headline does not resonate, if it does not connect, then the rest of your message is never even seen. And this is why Hopkins emphasized that the difference between a good headline and a great one can be enormous, often multiplying results several times over, because a small change at the beginning of the process can create a massive difference at the end. And this is a principle that extends far beyond advertising into every area of business and finance, because small improvements at the top of a system can create exponential results over time. And this is how leverage works, not through massive effort, but through strategic optimization. And as you continue to refine your understanding, you begin to see that the headline is not just about attracting attention, it is about setting expectations, because the moment someone reads your headline, they form an immediate judgment about whether your message is worth their time. And this judgment is based on relevance, clarity, and perceived value. And if your headline fails to communicate these elements, the reader moves on, often without a second thought. And this is why vague, clever, or ambiguous headlines are so dangerous, because they may attract curiosity, but they often fail to attract the right audience. And this leads to low quality attention, low engagement, and ultimately poor results. And this is where discipline becomes essential, because it requires restraint to avoid the temptation of cleverness, to resist the urge to impress, and to focus instead on what works, on what has been proven through testing, through data, and through real-world results. And this is the essence of scientific. As you advance further into the science of advertising, you begin to understand that beyond attention, beyond persuasion, and even beyond proof, there lies a deeper principle that governs all successful campaigns. And that principle is testing, because no matter how strong your ideas may seem, no matter how confident you are in your assumptions, the market is the only judge that matters, and it responds not to opinions but to results. And this is where Claude Hopkins introduced one of the most revolutionary shifts in thinking. The idea that every advertisement must justify itself through measurable performance, through returns that can be tracked, analyzed, and improved. And this is what separates scientific advertising from all other forms. Because in this world, nothing is left to chance. Nothing is accepted without proof, and nothing is repeated without evidence that it works. And this is where your mindset must evolve, because you are no longer creating advertisements. You are running experiments, you are testing variables, you are measuring outcomes. And you are using that data to refine your approach continuously, and this process is what transforms advertising into a predictable system. Because once you know what works, you can replicate it, you can scale it, and you can build upon it. And this is where true financial power begins. Because predictability is the foundation of growth, and growth is the foundation of wealth. And as you begin to apply this principle, you will notice that your focus shifts from guessing to measuring, from hoping to knowing, and this shift alone can dramatically increase your effectiveness. Because instead of relying on intuition alone, you are validating your decisions with real-world data. And this is where small improvements begin to compound. because even a slight increase in response rate, even a minor improvement in conversion, can lead to significant increases in revenue when applied at scale. And this is one of the most powerful financial freedom principles you can adopt. That optimization, not expansion, is often the fastest path to growth, because when you improve what already works, you multiply your results without increasing your effort proportionally. And this is how efficiency becomes profit and profit becomes freedom. And as you continue to refine your approach, you begin to understand the importance of tracking every element of your campaign. Because without tracking, you are blind. You cannot see what is working. You cannot identify what is failing. And you cannot improve effectively. And this is why Hopkins emphasized the use of coded advertisements, unique offers, and measurable responses, because these tools allow you to trace results back to their source, to understand exactly which elements are driving performance and which are not. And this level of clarity is what gives you control, because when you know what works, you can eliminate waste, you can focus your resources, and you can scale with confidence. And this is where advertising becomes not just a tool for selling, but a system for building wealth, because it allows you to allocate your time, your money, and your energy with precision, maximizing your return on investment and minimizing unnecessary risk. And this is how you move from uncertainty to predictability, from inconsistency to stability, and from effort to leverage. Because once you have a system that produces results, you can expand it, you can automate it, and you can build upon it, creating a foundation that supports long-term growth. And this is where another critical principle emerges, and that is the importance of continuous improvement. Because in scientific advertising, success is never final. Every result is an opportunity to learn, to refine, and to improve. And this mindset is what keeps you ahead. Because while others become complacent, you are constantly testing new ideas, exploring new approaches, and pushing the boundaries of what is possible. And this is how you maintain your advantage, because in a competitive environment, standing still is the same as moving backward. And those who succeed are those who continue to evolve, who continue to adapt, and who continue to optimize their systems. And this principle extends directly into financial success, because the same mindset that drives improvement in advertising can be applied to every area of your life, from your business strategies to your investments to your personal development. Because when you are committed to continuous improvement, you are always increasing your efficiency, your effectiveness, and your ability to create value. And this is what leads to long-term wealth, not one-time successes, but consistent, repeatable results that compound over time. And as you continue on this path, you begin to see that the true power of scientific advertising lies not just in its ability to generate sales, but in its ability to create systems that can be measured, improved, and scaled, systems that turn effort into results and results into growth. And this is where you move beyond being a participant in business and become a strategist, someone who understands not just what works, but why it works and how to make it work better. And this understanding is what gives you control, because when you can predict outcomes, you can plan with confidence, you can invest with clarity, and you can build with purpose. And that is where true financial freedom begins. Not in random success, but in systematic, repeatable, and scalable results that are driven by knowledge, guided by data, and refined through continuous testing. And once you master this process, you are no longer dependent on luck. You are operating with a level of precision and control that allows you to create success consistently. And that consistency is what ultimately leads to stability, growth, and the kind of financial independence that is built not on chance, but on proven principles applied with discipline and intention over time. And now you arrive at the final and most powerful realization of all, the point where everything you have learned about advertising transforms from knowledge into mastery. And that realization is this: advertising is not a department, not a campaign, and not a temporary effort. It is the very engine of your business. The force that drives growth, determines income, and ultimately shapes your financial future. Because no matter how great your product is, no matter how valuable your service may be, if you cannot present it effectively, if you cannot communicate its value clearly, and if you cannot convert attention into action, then your success will always remain limited. And this is why Claude Hopkins emphasized that the ability to sell systematically and scientifically is one of the most valuable skills any individual or business can possess. Because when you master this ability, you are no longer dependent on chance. You are no longer hoping for results. You are creating them deliberately, consistently, and predictably. And this is where everything begins to align, because all the principles you have learned, understanding the customer, writing with clarity, offering value, proving your claims, crafting effective headlines, and testing relentlessly, now come together as a unified system. A system that allows you to take an idea and turn it into measurable results, to take attention and turn it into income, and to take effort and turn it into scalable growth. And this is where advertising becomes more than communication, it becomes leverage. Because once you have a message that works, once you have a system that converts, you can multiply it, you can scale it, and you can reach more people without increasing your effort proportionally. And this is one of the most powerful financial freedom principles you can understand. That leverage, not labor, is the key to wealth. Because when your results are tied directly to your time, your income will always be limited. But when you build systems that work independently, that generate results continuously, your income becomes scalable. And this is where true financial independence begins, not when you work harder, but when your systems work for you. And as you continue to apply these principles, you will begin to see that success in advertising, like success in business, is not about doing many things. It is about doing the right things consistently and improving them over time. Because mastery is not achieved through one breakthrough. It is built through repetition, through refinement, and through a commitment to continuous improvement. And this is where discipline becomes your greatest asset, because the principles you have learned are simple, but they require consistency. They require attention to detail, and they require a willingness to test, to learn, and to adapt. And those who are willing to do this, those who are willing to treat advertising as a science rather than an art, gain an advantage that compounds over time, because every improvement builds on the last. Every success creates a foundation for the next, and over time, this compounding effect leads to results that seem extraordinary, but are in fact the natural outcome of consistent application. And this is where you begin to operate at a completely different level, because you are no longer guessing. You are no longer relying on luck. You are using proven principles to guide your decisions, to shape your strategies, and to create predictable outcomes. And this is what gives you control, because when you can predict results, you can plan with confidence, you can invest with clarity, and you can build with purpose. And this is where your relationship with business changes, because you are no longer reacting to the market. You are influencing it, you are shaping it, and you are positioning yourself in a way that allows you to capture value consistently. And this is where another powerful truth emerges, that success is not about being the best. It is about being the most effective, because effectiveness is what drives results, and results are what drive income. And this is why simplicity, clarity, and precision will always outperform complexity, confusion, and guesswork. And as you integrate these principles into your life, you will begin to see that the same mindset that drives success in advertising can be applied to every area of your financial journey. Because whether you are building a business, investing in opportunities, or creating new income streams, the ability to test, measure, and to optimize is what determines your results. And this is how you reduce risk, increase efficiency, and build systems that generate consistent returns. And this is the foundation of long-term wealth, not one-time wins, but repeatable processes that produce results over and over again. And as you continue forward, remember this guiding principle, one that encapsulates the entire philosophy of scientific advertising. The only purpose of advertising is to make sales. And while this may seem simple, it carries profound implications, because it reminds you to stay focused, to stay disciplined, and to measure everything against results. And when you do this, when you align your actions with outcomes, when you commit to continuous improvement, and when you apply these principles with consistency, you unlock a level of control that most people never experience, because you are no longer guessing what works, you are knowing what works. And you are using that knowledge to build a system that generates income. scales efficiently, and moves you steadily toward financial freedom. And that is the ultimate power of scientific advertising, not just the ability to sell, but the ability to create a predictable, repeatable, and scalable path to success where your efforts are guided by principles, your decisions are supported by data, and your results are the direct outcome of a system that you understand, control, and continuously improve over time.